Does God still speak to people today? From the book Reign Right Now, Lord, from fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. Posted by EttyB on the FOTM online discussion board at fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. Some years ago, I had awakened before my family, and I was in the kitchen when I heard the voice of the Lord say, "Roast a chicken." I had heard his voice before, so I said, "I'll be glad to, Lord, if you will tell me who to give it to." While I was speaking, I was pulling a chicken from my freezer and preparing a thought. "I want you to take it to Mrs. Ming," he said. Well, I don't know Mrs. Ming. I knew of her, though. I knew that she was an elderly woman in our church who was the wife of a retired minister. I knew that she had cancer and that her elderly husband was caring for her. I didn't know what she looked like, had never spoken to her, and didn't know where they lived. But the Lord had spoken, so I thawed the chicken and prepared it for roasting, then put it in the oven. As I prepared it, I thought of other things I might fix to make a complete meal. Fluffy fruit salad, mashed potatoes and gravy, corn. It sounded good, even to me. It was just a few minutes before noon when the meal was ready, and I decided that I would call our church office and see if anyone knew the address of the Mings. It was Saturday, and I knew the office was closed, but I called anyway. Someone answered the phone and gave me the address of the elderly couple. Bless them. I got a large box, armed with the address, and headed out to a nearby town that I was not familiar with. Within 2 minutes of driving into the town, I was at their house. Still, I felt rather foolish pulling into the driveway of complete strangers, holding a big cardboard box and saying, "Hey, I'm here with a chicken dinner that God told me to bring to you." That was out of my comfort zone. But I got the box out of the back of my car and did just that. A little man with a dear face opened the door and looked at me questioningly. "Yes," he said. "God told me to bring you a chicken dinner for lunch, so here I am. Have you already eaten?" He opened the door and stepped aside, motioning me to set the box on the kitchen counter. I lifted the hot dishes out of the box and took the covers off. Not only had they not eaten, the kitchen was dark and nothing had even been started in the way of a meal. The little man looked jolly as he said they hadn't had a bite. He lovingly prepared a plate for his sick wife and took it into her darkened room. "This lady has brought us a roasted chicken for lunch," he told her. I was still in the kitchen when he came back and said, "My wife would like to talk to you." I walked into the room of a woman who was in the last stages of cancer. She reached a frail hand out to me, and in a soft voice she said, "This morning I was so hungry for chicken, I thought I couldn't stand it. So I said, 'Jesus, I don't know how you can do it, or if you even think it's important enough, but if you could get me some roasted chicken, I would be so happy.'" She looked at me with the sweetest expression and said, "He used you." That dear lady went home to be with Jesus before the next week was out, and the Lord let me be His hand reaching out in love to her. What a privilege. Later, I was telling the little incident to one of my young daughter's friends, and she said, "Oh, that was my grandma. She didn't have any appetite at all for weeks before she died. How nice that the Lord gave her such a blessing right before she went home." I thought then that if I'd failed to respond to God's voice, refused to move out of my comfort zone, that the Lord would probably have found someone else who would be faithful. But what a blessing I would have missed. More on this from fellowshipofthemartyrs.com.